Thank you, and thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And it's a pleasure to follow the honourable member for Dover, who's made some very powerful arguments in support of improving maternity services in her own area, and indeed to follow other honourable members who are making their maiden speeches this evening. I'm sure we'll hear a lot more from them. Madam Deputy Speaker, in the time that I have, I want to make a familiar argument about access and funding for radiotherapy services. I do know that the Minister, the honourable member for Charnwood, has heard this argument on previous occasions, but I'm going to make it again because I'm not convinced that the Secretary of State understands the arguments that are being made. It isn't rocket science. In the United Kingdom, radiotherapy accounts for just £383 million of the NHS resource budget, despite the fact that 1 in 4 of us are going to need radiotherapy at some point in our lives. In his opening remarks, the Secretary of State referred to the government's commitment to invest in new diagnostic equipment and scanners, and I very much welcome that. But he didn't seem to get the link. I didn't hear the penny dropping about the important link between diagnosis and treatment. So I must declare an interest. I'm Vice Chair of the All-Party Group for Radiotherapy. I am a cancer survivor myself, and I've benefited from this particular type of treatment. So I want to basically make 3 points. I want to cover the cancer challenge, briefly the current state of radiotherapy, and set out a future vision for NHS radiotherapy. But this is within the context of the bill and those key points that I tried to make in the interventions about how vital workforce planning is and how vital capital budgets are. It's not just a case of replacing hospital car parks. This is about vital equipment that's essential to improve cancer outcomes for our patients. About 50% of people will develop cancer at some time in their lives, and even if we are fortunate to be spared the disease, I'm sure we all know someone, a loved one, who's been touched by cancer. So I'm not arguing from a completely selfish point of view here, in putting a case for me, my constituency or my region, because being a magnanimous sort of individual and recognise the sentiment in the House, I'm arguing that we should improve cancer services across the whole of the country. And I think access to world-class cancer treatment really matters for every single one of our constituents in every constituency in the United Kingdom. And I don't want to take issue with a statement that the Minister, the Secretary of State, has made on more than one occasion. The results, cancer outcome results that we have, and this isn't my opinion, this is the UK Healthcare Journal, this is the Lancet, and these were figures that were only published in November of last year, just before the election, and they actually show that in the comparing nine comparator countries, we had the lowest, in the United Kingdom, we had the lowest survival rates for breast cancer and colon cancer, and the second lowest survival rates for rectal cancer and cervical cancer. And 24% of early diagnosed lung cancer patients are not getting any treatment at all. So in truth, while our cancer survival rates are improving, so it's not a lie that the Minister said, we've still got the worst cancer outcomes in Europe. The baseline is very low. So while I welcome that the government are committed to considering ways to improve diagnosis with a plan to set new cancer diagnosis targets with patients to receive cancer results within 28 days, that's great. But we still need to address the issues about staff capacity and the desperate need for more radiologists, for more skilled people in the imaging teams, to address shortages in endoscopy, in pathology and in the vital IT networks. Unlike chemotherapy, which I've also had on a couple of occasions, which impacts the entire body with chemicals, advanced radiotherapy targets tumours precisely to within fractions of millimetres, limiting damage to healthy cells in close proximity to the tumour. And improved technology, improved radiotherapy technology, allows us to treat cancers that were previously only treatable with either surgery or chemotherapy or a combination of both. And, you know, in terms of the cost arguments, radiotherapy is cost effective for patients and for the NHS and for ministers who are obviously very keen to ensure that we get value for money. A typical course of radiotherapy costs between £3,000 and £6,000, far less than most chemotherapy and immunotherapy cures, with patients experiencing very few side effects. The problem is that access to radiotherapy centres and this life-saving treatment isn't evenly distributed across the United Kingdom. In a 2019 audit showed that 32% of men with locally advanced prostate cancer in the UK are being potentially undertreated, with 15 to 56% of trusts in this survey not offering the sort of radical radiotherapy these patients really required. In England, advanced curative radiotherapy is actively restricted for no good reason, with only half of the 52 centres commissioned by NHS England to deliver advanced radiotherapy that we called SABRE. This despite the fact that the use of SABRE is specifically recommended by NICE. So, we're coming up to World Cancer Day on the 4th of February. So I'm hoping that the Secretary of State and the Minister, who I know understands this issue, because we've spent a deal of time, I want him to make a commitment on behalf of the government that the UK is going to become a world-class centre for patient-first radiotherapy so that we can improve our cancer survivor rates. It's going to require an increase in investment. We need to address the issue about capital funding. Currently, radiotherapy gets 5% of the cancer treatment budget. We need that to be closer to the European average of 11%. There's an immediate need for £140 million of investment to replace the 50 or so radiotherapy machines. These are all linear accelerators that are still in use, despite them being older than their recommended 10-year life and still being used until the end of 2019. We need investment in IT. We need to help establish the 11 new radiotherapy networks. I think the Minister touched on that, but again it comes under capital and workforce training. And indeed the all-party group on radiotherapy in our manifesto for radiotherapy is calling for a very modest increase in the annual radiotherapy budget from 5% to 6.5%. That's the revenue budget, and for the government to establish some basic standards to secure our vision for radiotherapy. We need to recruit and train the highly skilled clinicians, radiographers, medical physicists and healthcare professionals. And we need to guarantee every cancer patient has access to a radiotherapy centre within a 45-minute travel time. In 2020, the government should set themselves a 2030 target, a cancer target that in the next decade the UK will go from the worst cancer outcomes to the best cancer survival rates in the world. And we could do this, and we could make a start by delivering a world-class radiotherapy service. Thank you.